Queensland has released their state nomination criteria, and today we're going to focus on the 491 visa in Queensland. In my previous video, I discussed the 190 visa in Queensland, and in my next video, I'll discuss the pathway for graduates in Queensland. So first of all, let's go through the eligibility criteria. Now, this applies to all skilled visas regardless. So you must score at least 65 points. However, that is including the state nomination points. So if on your own you can only score 50 points, you will get an additional 15 points from the state for 491. So that is really helpful. You must have a positive skills assessment in your nominated occupation, which is on the relevant occupation list. You must be under 45 years of age at the time of your invitation, and you must meet the minimum English requirement, which is competent English. However, Queensland has a minimum points requirement as well. So a lot of the time you'll find that you might even need proficient English to reach the requirement. Now, the 491 visa is a provisional visa. It is the skilled work regional provisional visa. When you are granted this visa, you will get it for a total of 5 years. From the date of grant, you will need to live and work in regional Australia for at least 3 years. And then if you meet the criteria, you could be eligible for permanent residency under the Skilled Work Regional 191 visa, which we have seen recent grants for. Now, it looks like for Queensland, they do require you to remain in Queensland. Now, that is not a requirement by the Department of Home Affairs, but a requirement from Migration Queensland. And they do have a right to withdraw their nomination. So I'll touch on this a little bit later, but if you are granted for the 491 visa in Queensland, it's probably a good idea to stay there for the 3 years at least. So let's jump into the Migration Queensland criteria. So you'll need to score at least 65 points or higher, but as you know, you get 15 points for state nomination. You must have an eligible occupation, so you need to have an occupation on the list. You can refer to LIN 19/051. I'll drop it in the caption section below. You must score at least competent English unless your occupation requires otherwise. So an example is for registered nurse or enrolled nurse. To be eligible for your registration and skills assessment, you actually need to have proficient English, which is equivalent to 7 each. So you'll need to provide evidence that you are living and working in regional Queensland and have full-time post-qualification employment. That employment needs to be at least 30 hours per week in your nominated occupation or closely related at the time of your EOI lodgement. Now, there's no minimum time frame for this, so it's not like you need to be working for at least 3 months or 6 months before you can apply. Last year, the requirement was that you needed to be working in your nominated occupation for 3 months before you can apply, but looks like they've removed that requirement now. So as I've said in my previous videos, the requirements in Queensland is simply similar to last year, but almost easier, you could say, which is really, really encouraging. It means that they need skilled workers. Otherwise, why would they, kind of reduce the requirements and make it a little bit easier, essentially, right? You will need to provide evidence that you have ongoing full-time employment in regional Queensland, and this needs to be at least for another 6 months at the time of your EOI lodgement, and it needs to be in your nominated occupation, obviously. And they've made it very clear at the bottom that you must commit to living and working in regional Queensland for 3 years from the date of the visa grant. So when you get your 491 visa granted, it doesn't actually say you have to stay in a specific postcode, but it does say you have to stay in regional postcodes. So the idea is that, if you're granted the 491 visa in Queensland, if you get a job opportunity in Perth or Adelaide, maybe you could relocate there essentially, because that is still within your conditions of the 491 visa. However, Queensland themselves, they're the ones that nominated you. So although they don't have any control over the visa conditions, they do have the control to withdraw your state nomination. So even though you're granted the 491 visa, you are still being sponsored by the state essentially. And what these states are saying is that they can withdraw the nomination at any time. So that's why we do tell our clients to kind of err on the side of caution and don't move unless there's absolutely necessary. Now, I know some states are okay with this. Like, they understand if you can't find a job there, like, why would you stay there, right? But, if they're nominating you, there's probably a demand for your occupation in the state, in that regional area as well. So that's probably why they're nominating you as well. Again, there is caveats for certain occupations. So if you're applying as an accountant, you need to be working in an accounting firm or a medium or larger size business. For example, a medium business is considered to be a business that employs 20 people or more, and you must be a CPA, CA, or IPA, or studying towards becoming a CPA, CA, or IPA. If you are an internal or external auditor, you must have a job as an auditor, not as an accountant. And for cooks and chefs, you can't be working in takeaway or fast food businesses. It needs to be a full service cafe or restaurant. Now, a couple of important things to take note of. If you are eligible for 190 and 491, they only want you to submit one EOI, then they'll invite you for the 190 or the 491, and you need to submit a new EOI, so after the 6th of September 2023. Now, your employer must have a registered office in Queensland. They're not going to accept it if it's like a virtual office or something like that. If you have more than one skills assessment, just submit one EOI, the one that's closest to your nominated occupation, because obviously you need to be working in your nominated occupation. If you work for a labor hire company, they will accept this if it's registered and operating in Queensland. And yeah, that's how it is. You'd submit an expression of interest, and if you are selected, then you'll get an invitation, then you'll complete the nomination application, you have to complete the settlement funds declaration as well. You need to provide evidence that you have the funds to relocate or stay in Queensland as well. So I hope that video was helpful. In the next video, I'll do a video on graduates of Queensland. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.